Garrett Graff is a respected journalist and author, perhaps best known for his heart-stopping accounts of 9/11 and Raven Rock, the government's secret plan to protect itself while the rest of us die, recently produced as a documentary for Vice TV. A former editor of the Washingtonian, he's an accomplished public speaker with political aspirations, including possibly a run for governor of Vermont or the U.S. Senate. One story he hasn't told, at least until now, is how he has done all of that while living with multiple learning differences.
I have three interrelated issues that I've spent my life living with and working through: dysgraphia, dysarthria, and dyslexia. That's a speaking challenge, that's a reading challenge, and that's a writing challenge. It was something that my parents became aware of when basically when I was starting out in preschool and was lagging behind the other students developmentally, and ended up in pretty intensive special ed right through about sixth grade. The irony for me as a writer is, my parents were sort of never really sure originally how well I would ever read or write. The school system where I grew up suggested actually that I not be mainstreamed as a student at all, and that I go into a special education track full time to try to work through these issues. My parents chose to keep me mainstreamed, and instead I spent elementary school working with my speech therapist and others to try to overcome these learning challenges, and have largely succeeded in English, and had forgotten about those challenges in many ways by high school, when I started to try to learn foreign languages, and then found both in high school and then in college that basically I was never really going to be able to learn a foreign language, that it was enough of a challenge for me to get one language right. I was always going to struggle to learn a second language. And so in my freshman year in college, ended up in the mandatory first year language requirement. Full year immersive Spanish was what I chose poorly. And about halfway through the first semester, the professor sat me down and said, hey, I can tell you're working at this. I can tell you are trying, but you are literally flunking the class. Do you have any learning disabilities? And I was like, oh yeah, I had not thought about it. But that actually is a challenge that I have had in the past with learning language, and ended up barely skating through my first year language requirement with a minimum passing grade in order to be able to not repeat the class my sophomore year again. And so today, obviously I write for a living, I read for a living, I talk for a living. And the place where it continues to be a challenge for me is with numbers. My dyslexia still manifests itself in the fact that I have trouble remembering a phone number correctly, or even something as simple as looking up a page in a book index and then trying to turn to that page. I'll end up turning to page 376 instead of 367. And luckily for me, the work that I did growing up and the special ed teachers and helpers I had along the way have meant that that's sort of the extent of the challenge that I still face in my adult life. But it does mean that numbers and foreign languages are a world that I will never really get to know.
Having overcome learning differences himself with the help of his parents and gone on to graduate with a degree in history from Harvard, he can relate to others who are going through similar struggles now.
It is possible to overcome and deal with and work through these types of challenges. My parents, never expected that I would be the writer or reader that I am today. And my first book, I dedicated to them. With the dedication, to my mom and dad, who against long odds taught me to love words.
As a parent himself, he's reluctant to offer any universal advice for parents of children with learning differences, but he did offer this.
I think for my blanket advice to parents facing children working through learning challenges is, to trust yourself and to trust your knowledge of your child. And when you are told something by experts, the experts don't necessarily know your particular child. And there's a lot of help and support that is possible out there. But at the end of the day, it's going to be you making your own choices about the child that you know best.
For A World of Difference, I'm Brad Kuhn.